I've often called out business in South Africa for being so scared to tackle the issues that affect South Africa, and especially the ones that affect their businesses. It's also said often that South African business, especially big business and big businessmen, have never met a government in South Africa they weren't comfortable dealing with. This came to the fore in the last election, where our big companies stepped in to help the ANC before the election. And you remember we got some of the top business people here, held them to account, didn't stop them from helping the government, but it didn't help the ANC to get a majority. One businessman in South Africa has bucked this trend, and boy, has he done it hard. He's become less of a businessman and more of a media celebrity, and it's about time that we have him on the State of the Nation. Rob Hersov, welcome to the State of the Nation.
Mike,
great to have you.
Honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm always scared when people say honor. Jesus, then
what
you
a
know
pleasure
that,
to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, Rob, you broke the mold, as I said in the intro. You broke the mold because a lot of your very rich mates have been very, very, very silent in South Africa for 30 years. They were silent for the 30 years before then. I know it wasn't your mates, probably your father's mates. But, you have definitely found your voice, and you haven't been scared to use it.
Yeah, it's not just me. I mean, if we go back before 1994, Gavin Relly of Anglo American, traveled up to Lusaka, led a delegation to meet the ANC, and the Nat government were not amused. Harry Oppenheimer was very vocal. He stood up,
and he was even in Parliament.
And he was in Parliament, and he supported the opposition to the Nats. He was very vocal, as were various other people. And even since 1994, there have been instances. Johan Rupert stood up in about 2016, 2017, and he took a pounding because nobody supported him. And he was called white monopoly capital. That was when Zuma was in charge, and they were using all the international Bell Pottingers and others to create these monstrous, narratives. And he stood up, and no one supported him. So there have been people standing up. Neil Froneman's been very good. Michelle LaRue's been very good. Alan Pullinger, and Gareth Ackerman here and there, and others. But in the main, business has not said a word. It's been the silence of the lambs. But there is a difference between someone running a business with 10, 20, 30, 40,000 employees and me. I don't have a big business in South Africa where I'm the CEO or chairman. I don't have 10, 20,000 employees. The unions, BEE directors, PIC owning a stake. And so it's not been easy, but it's a lot easier for me to do and say what other people can't afford to do and say than it is, for example, for an Adrian Gore or a Yanni Durant to do it. It is harder for them, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't do it.
Now, it's hypothetical, but if you did have that 10, 20, 30,000 employee business,
I might have been fired by now.
You might have been fired, or do you think you would have been quiet? Which one do you think is more likely?
I'd probably be fired.
Okay. Yeah, but Rob, full credit to you, because you have been a person that has spoken out, and it's attracted a lot of attention. And but yet, South Africa at the moment finds itself in a fairly precarious position. You made mention earlier of Bell Pottinger. I mean, you've got to say, in terms of PR spend, whatever the Zuma and his team spent was well spent, because that terminology is still used to this day and will probably never leave. The white monopoly capital stuff that has tarnished relationships in South Africa and continues to.
Absolutely. I lived in London at the time, and I was furious when I found out that it was actually a paid PR initiative by Zuma to Bell Pottinger, and it was really cruel and nasty what they did to the country, and they went bankrupt as a result. South Africans took up arms in London and went after Bell Pottinger, and clients pulled their contracts, and they just eventually went bust as a result of it, and deservedly so. But the narrative continues, and it's a nonsense narrative, but it continues. And the other PR narratives that the ANC and MK and EFF use to escape accountability for the disaster that they've created over the last 10, 15 years in South Africa is whiteness, is apartheid, is colonialism. They use every excuse in the book not to be accountable for the fact that they've failed and they've screwed the country up.
Yeah, which brings us to the screwed up country that we live in.
That we love.
Yeah, we do love it. I'm not sure why, but we do love it. And we I suppose because we can see it potentially, we could see how easy it would be to turn it around.
Exactly right. And as a businessman, I look at South Africa and I know I could fix this country in short order. The state-owned enterprises are bankrupt and broken, and the infrastructure is falling apart in most of the country, not the DA-run areas, but everywhere else. But it's fixable. And the human capital in this country, of all colors, black, white, green, yellow, all shapes and sizes, is second to none. Because look how South Africans perform. We punch above our weight in every single category. So South Africa is easy to fix, but there isn't the will at the top, and there's no leader that's putting their hand up saying, I can and I will do it. Not even in the GNU.
Yeah, the GNU, it's a thing we'll get onto in a minute. But the ANC, they were to the manor born. They had this crazily big majority, people that would rather die than vote for any other party. They've lost their majority, knowing why they lost their majority, but still won't tackle those issues. What do you suppose informs that kind of behavior, where they know what it is? People have told them what it is they don't like. They don't like being unemployed. They don't like corruption. They don't like the infrastructure has been destroyed, especially, etc. But yet the ANC will not do anything about it. In your opinion, what do you suppose is the problem there?
No one's running the ANC. Cyril's not in charge. He's not a leader. He never was. He's not a businessman. He never was. He's at best a community organizer and a reader of the news. Dear South African friends and family. He's quite good at that. I'd give him that job, but I wouldn't give him any other job. So he's not in charge. No one's in charge. And the ANC on the recent Strategic Research Foundation poll has dropped to 30%. It's at 30%, the ANC. The only people hanging on are the cadres, the BEE recipients, who are each still chomping at the trough, and the gogos, who remember 1994 and still think of the ANC as a liberation group. The rest have given up on the ANC. And now we hear that the communists, how moronic to have communists in this day and age, are going to compete in the municipal elections outside of the ANC. And that's a good thing, because the ANC is fragmenting. It won't die, but it'll end up being one of two things. A poor rural party, and then maybe the capitalist wing, the free market wing of the ANC, which I reckon is about 10 of the 30%, a third of the 30%, will come and swing and join the DA and Patriotic Alliance and FF Plus to form, at long last, a centre-right pole. But, if you look at Gauteng as an example, the ANC's lost control of Gauteng. They have absolutely no ability to influence what the lunatic Lessufi and his merry monsters are doing. The fact they renamed Santon Drive was an affront to just about everyone in South Africa. And they did it because they're a bunch of out-of-control kids that think they can do anything. So the Islamic faction of the ANC, because the ANC is being bribed by Iran, demanded control of foreign affairs. Naledi Pandor is a Muslim, and her very nasty husband, take a look at this guy, has been pushing the fact. They brought back the money from Iran, and they said, we want foreign affairs. They appoint Abraham Rasool, who then goes and insults America. I doubt Cyril ever wanted that to happen, but he's not in control. He has no control at all. No one runs the ANC anymore. And the next level down don't give a damn about South Africa. Fikile, Paul Mashatile, etc. They just want to be the next one in power so they can steal. And these, I had an idea for a cartoon. Yesterday, you might see it coming. And it's a shop. You see these sale, going out of business stores. Usually they stay for years with going out of business, last chance. I can see this shop, broken shop with a smashed front window, South Africa Inc., with people jumping out of the window with half full bags of loot, and people running towards it with empty bags to fill up. And on the shop, it's, last chance to steal, closing down soon. But it's South Africa Inc. And there's sort of one minion looking at another saying, but I thought they'd stolen everything.
Yeah.
So, that's what's happening. It's last chance to steal.
Yeah.
And you can see it happening.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on one of the things you said that I've learned that perhaps we should stop saying. That you said, like, you doubt if this is what Cyril wants. And I'm saying there's been 100 of those such things. Therefore, after a while, you've got to say, maybe this is what Cyril wants, which is quite weird in its, if you just sort of think about it like that, because he's been there. He's not a stupid guy, but yet everything happens and, he's always shocked. But quite clearly, he knows what's going to happen. And he had the power, for example, to stop the road, naming, etc., etc.
Does he?
Well, he must do. I mean, you would
Really?
imagine. Yeah, I would say so. I would say, and my reasoning there would be quite simply, we saw under Mbeki, under Zuma even, that if there was a decision that they want passed, they got it passed.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm saying those aren't big issues, but they could have done something about it. I'm saying I'd say that we've got to stop giving him the benefit of the doubt. It's a bit late in the game, but let's stop giving him the benefit of the doubt.
He's fundamentally useless.
Yeah, there is no doubt about it.
He's probably quite nice to have a lunch or dinner with, or trade a buffalo with. But
and of course, to have a country run by a committee of 100. I mean, you could never run your company with, sit around the table in a marquee, because you've got to accommodate 100 people with 100 different voices, and that's just impossible. That's
my
what they're
question
trying
is,
to do.
when are the Gogos going to say enough is enough?
Well, there, I think that's a simple one. They won't, and we've got history with that, right? In Zim, in Namibia, in all of these countries, there's a certain section of the population that will never vote somebody else, and that's fine. Let them. That'll give the ANC 18% in the next election, and that's where it'll sit until those people die off, which kind of happens. Eventually, God takes care of that particular problem. But, right now, obviously, as we said, the problem is easy to solve, but yet we seem to go out of our way to throw fuel on the fire. And nowhere has this been more apparent than in our diplomatic relations, especially with the US.
Funnily enough, when I drove in and parked my car, I saw somebody's got an Orlando Pirates sticker. And I don't follow football, but I grew up as a Kaizer Chiefs fan, and my nickname's Chief. So there we go. There's a fit. But I was just thinking, if the ANC were a football team, they'd be the world champions at own goals.
Yeah.
They are so useless in doing things, scoring things for South Africa, but scoring own goals, they're masters.
Okay, so what they did manage to do is they got 40%, which is significant, and enter into the government of national unity. With the DA, essentially the idea that was sold to the world was
The two of them.
The two of them, these guys understand business. We're not going to rock the boat too much. But it has not yielded any benefits for SA Inc., other than to perhaps get Home Affairs slightly better.
Well, it's a bit better than that.
Yeah.
And I went to a DA lunch 10 days ago in the Cape, and they had John Steenhuisen, Dean McPherson, Leon Schreiber, Solly Malatsi, who else was there? Yeah, and a few others. They had ministers and some deputy ministers, and each person had 10 to 15 minutes to stand up and say what they'd done. It was incredibly impressive. I didn't know 90% of what they said. And at the end of the lunch, it was like a 4-hour presentation because, they'd break up and networking and things like that. And at the end of the thing, I went to the chief of staff, Chris Loebscher of John Steenhuisen. I said, why don't you video this? Your head of marketing should be fired. You should have videoed this and put it out. It was so impressive. And I might go and do that for the DA if they're so asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
But what each minister has done in their ministry, and I know they don't control trade and industry, I know they don't control foreign affairs, but the DA in each ministry that they're influential has done an incredibly good job. And I know Gayton McKenzie has done the same in sports, arts, and culture. He even talked me through his Doge actions. And I said, well, you need to tell people. He said, when I'm ready, I'm going to tell them. He's kicked out ghost workers, as has Leon Schreiber, as has Dean McPherson, but thousands of them, people that didn't exist. They've gone bing, 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 bing. They're cutting costs in their ministries. But then again, as you're going to get to, the ANC still control the key ministries, and they're still breaking and stealing.
Yeah. And you mentioned Gayton McKenzie, and to everybody that's watching us, we got a business breakfast on the 16th of April at the Sandton Convention Centre, where we're going to have Gayton McKenzie together with Dr. Frans Cronje.
I'm getting FOMO.
Yeah,
I should be there.
Perhaps, certainly at the next
Those
one.
are two rock stars.
Yeah, they are rock stars, and they actually get on quite well. Which, while we're on the topic of Gayton, we're going to come back to the DA in a minute. You and Gayton McKenzie have got a relationship.
Yeah, friends.
Right?
Good friends, yeah.
But I'm not 100% sure what to make of Gayton. I've had him on the show a couple of times. We butted heads quite badly because I'm not 100% sure that his intentions are as honourable as he says he is. Because, for example, he's the guy that has given them power here in Johannesburg. He's the guy who switched horses. And he keeps on blaming the DA for not giving him more than what was negotiated. Now, it's nice to have somebody else to blame, but all I know is I live in Johannesburg, and you know the city well, and you know the state that it's in. Everybody forgets that the PA are the people that enable the ANC and the EFF to run the city into the ground. They've got the deputy mayor.
I think that's a little unfair to say they enabled it, but
they did.
You and I are being very logical, and we're looking at the country as a whole. But if you were the head of the EFF, the head of the Patriotic Alliance, or the head of the DA, you do things that are tactical for your political party and for your advancement in politics, and not just because it's good for the country. So I think you and I always like, oh my God, he should have. My wife too. Why didn't Gayton throw in his hat to the DA? Do you know the DA are probably less trustworthy for Gayton McKenzie than the ANC?
Yeah.
I think if he agrees a deal, hypothetically, but I think it's true. If he agrees a deal, certainly with Herman Mashaba. Herman Mashaba said, you shake hands with Gayton McKenzie, it gets done. You shake hands with the DA, it's 50-50 whether they're going to do it or not. And that's exactly how they've been treating Gayton, because he's a threat in the Western Cape. They've been treating him unbelievably badly, tactically, on the ground, and in some ways, if you put your Patriotic Alliance hat on, if it's possible, it's lime green, by the way.
Yeah.
The DA are impossible for him to deal with. They're stabbing him in the back. They're treating him with disdain. They're rubbishing him. They're calling him a gangster. And I've asked the DA on countless times, give me one shred of evidence of anything Gayton has done that's illegal, immoral, broke a promise. They don't give me one thing at all. And in many meetings where senior DA members say, Gayton said this, let us down, Corné Mulder was in exactly those meetings, and he said, the DA are not telling the truth. Gayton is. So I know what you're saying about Joburg, but the DA could have run Johannesburg, Gauteng, 2 years ago. They could have patched an alliance together with a whole lot of other parties. But here's the problem with Gauteng. It's such a big economic unit. It's like a business. You might have a good finance director and a crooked marketing director. I mean, the marketing director is going to steal. And that's Joburg, the too many hands on too many tillers. Unless you have 51%, it is unfixable. And the DA don't want to run this in a coalition. And I respect that.
Well, where perhaps you and I would disagree is I would say that every voter must remember who's running Johannesburg now.
That I agree with.
And vote accordingly.
I agree.
Because understand that there's 3 parties in coalition right now. Well, 4 if you count Al Jamar's party. But it's the ANC, the EFF, and the Patriotic Alliance. And Johannesburg voters must be...
Who's PAC? PAC. There's a PAC.
Yeah, I think they've got
some lunatic
Nazi
or
something. Yeah, they'll just throw it in. I mean, those guys are, easy to buy. It's a bit like Al Jamar. You just have to, offer them
some of the Iran money.
Some of the Iran money, and they're in. So,
look, to be fair, Gayton McKenzie, I think, set up the Patriotic Alliance with Kenny Kunene in 2003. They didn't get a single seat till 2015 or something. It's been a long time coming. They've got to do what they do to build their political party, and they've done a very good job thus far. So it's easy to criticize them. On your comment that you don't know where he stands on issues, he's been the most principled guy publicly on issues. He didn't have a single Jewish voter, but he stood with Israel. And a lot of his Muslim voters were very upset. And he just said, look, if Lesotho invaded us and took hostages, we would have every right to flatten Lesotho till we got our hostages back. I stand with Israel. He also said he's part of the Judeo-Christian world order, and therefore Israel is in the right. He had nothing to benefit from that. John Steenhuisen, on the other hand, do you remember that comment Gayton said, have you ever seen a white man dance?
Yeah.
John was like, oh, I think we should wait for the results of the ICJ. It was like, nonsense, John. Make a stand. What do you believe in? Yes, no.
Yeah, he was quick to make a stand on Ukraine, John.
Who, John?
Yeah.
And what was it?
Well, remember, he went there just after the invasion.
John's a good guy. I mean, on the ICJ thing, he was very wimpy.
Yeah.
So Gayton's principled. He's I'm a Hambe.
Yeah.
He's death penalty. He's property rights. He's very solid on principles. So
yeah. So yeah, let's hope they find each other. But on the on the DA, I mean, talk about needing somebody. I've had problems. It's the only party that has blackballed me officially.
How do you blackball someone from a party?
John has blackballed me. He will not come on there. He sent me messages saying, I'll never come on your show.
That's okay.
And
lots of other good people. Get Leon Schreiber, get Helen.
Leon won't come out. But anyway, that's more because clearly he has the problem. But anyway, the thing is that they're in pole position and they seem to blow it every time is really what pissed him off the most was me saying that it's their race to lose and they keep on losing it. Because
I think on the ground they're doing a very good job.
Yeah, but we live above the ground, and I've had interviews here with the DA people, and I realize why they can't win the hearts and minds of people, because you ask them a question and the answer goes straight into process. It's never ever that sort of answer that you want to hear that makes you feel warm and fuzzy. No. So when they got charge of Johannesburg, to use that as an example, they try and fix the accounts. Now, nobody can see you fixing accounts, even though it's a very necessary thing to do. And that they want to tout as their thing, rather tar a road.
It's a bit like corporate South Africa. They belong, and I've forgotten the acronym, but they belong to some organization that, the ANC stooge Martin Kingston runs.
Had him,
for them. What's it called?
Business, leadership South Africa, business leadership South Africa, BLS.
And all the corporates say, we give a lot of money, we get behind it, we do a huge amount of work through this organization. We have private meetings with Cyril. But you know what happens in a private meeting with Cyril? He just tells you what you want to hear. And then the next guy comes in, he tells them what they want to hear. And nothing gets done. And everyone walks away and goes, we believe in Cyril, he's a good guy. He just, palms them off. And corporates say, look at all this work we're doing, white papers. It's the same concept as what the DA does. It's all process.
Yeah. Okay. So
we need a firebrand.
We do need a fire. They need charisma is what they need. And they don't. The last person with any semblance of charisma was, I suppose, Tony Leon in his own way back then. And the rest, Helen, we voted out of fear, and the rest are not exactly convinced.
Helen's got charisma, in my view.
Yeah.
She's not going to take the job again, but she's got charisma.
Yeah,
and then there's some very good second and third ranking people coming up the ranks. But
so and then we've got the rise of MK and the sort of decline of EFF, but they're not going away. What do you make of MK?
Well, quickly on Julius and EFF. He's going to never, ever get beyond 10%. I mean, he's lucky to be even at 7%. South Africans are broadly Judeo-Christian, broadly pro-West, very conservative, religious. They want a better life for their children. They're not getting it from the ANC, that's for sure. Yeah. And they know that Julius is a troublemaker and is dangerous, and he is never, ever going to be mainstream. Even if he merges into an MK or EFF, he's just an outlier. Yeah. And I'd ignore him. On MK, though, they are the real thing. They are a serious threat. They are going to get their act together and get better organized. Floyd's doing a bit of Night of the Long Knives, making sure that he is in control and reports directly to Jacob Zuma. And Jacob Zuma is not going away. I mean, he's fit as a fiddle for 80-something-year-old, goes bounding up the steps onto the stage. And, he will live beyond the grave as well. So MK is a real threat. And, anything we say that's deemed to be slightly offensive or racist or whatever drives people to MK. So MK is a real threat. They're gonna get up to plus 20, 25 in the next election.
Well, it's going to be interesting. But of course, we've spoken about the incumbents. And I think if I read it right, we may agree on the fact that we desperately need another formation.
We do.
Right? Because, boy, do we have it wrong. I mean, you almost can't pick one of those parties that is not flawed
in some way.
In quite a dramatic fashion.
Yeah.
Right? That you wouldn't say if only that party was in charge.
And let's run down the list. I mean, the DA is the most obvious candidate to run this country, and they're very good at the potholes and the finances and the process. You know, they are the people that should be the chief operating officers of this country, running the detail, making stuff happen. But there's no one there that's going to lead the country. You can see it now. And Carter is too regional, too tribal, but they are conservative, capitalist, and potentially part of a center-right coalition. FF Plus are going to gain quite a lot of ground, but off a low base. Corné Mulder is superb, as my wife says, the only adult in the room. I mean, you know, Gayton president, him vice president.
Sorry, I got to challenge you on this because I actually got confirmation from Corné.
Yeah.
You said that your wife said that first, and I said that I said it first at a live event with Corné. And so we're already at this problem.
Anyway.
But yeah, he is. There's no doubt about it. And
then, you know, and then there's Patriotic Alliance, which is growing. I mean, they're doing very well municipally, and I could see them getting to 15% on their own. So, you know, maybe there's the DA at 22 to 25, Patriotic Alliance at 10 to 15, FF Plus at 5, and Carter at 5. You have your center-right coalition.
Yeah.
And then, and then the remnants of the ANC of 10%. The 10% of the pro-West capitalist ANC, the sort of BEE guys who realize they've eaten enough at the trough. You know, when Patrice Motsepe stands up and says, guys, this isn't working, come with me. I'll bring the new ANC to the DA. Then we've got a real chance in this country, and this country's fixable.
Yeah, but we do this in an international backdrop.
Yes,
South Africans love to forget that we live in the world, and the world also influences things. And
we're a tiny, irrelevant country.
And we will get swept with the wind. And, you know, what happened in 1990 when the ANC was unbanned, etc., people like to forget, was as a result of international affairs. Berlin Wall had fallen, communism was going, etc., and suddenly everybody goes to the negotiating table. Yeah, right. We've got another wind of change that's blowing through, and this one's perhaps a little bit chillier than the last one. The other one was a bit of a warm wind. And now we've got a fight between individual rights versus almost semi-hardcore socialist setups in many countries, Western countries that fallen into that trap. And it's broken out all over the show, right? It's not just Trump's America. It's Meloni in Italy. It's Milei in Argentina.
Hungary.
There's a lot of countries, even in Africa. South Africa won't be spared, will they?
No, absolutely not. And every own goal that the ANC is making today is absolutely front and center in America.
Yeah.
I mean, if the ANC had made it a strategy to piss off America, they've done an incredibly good job. But I just think, you know, there are too many disparate pieces that aren't properly controlled. And it's doing a huge amount of damage. My feeling is America is being well advised by South Africans that live in America, by very smart, mostly Republican, but some Democrats, because this is a bipartisan issue, and by South Africans that travel regularly, like Gary Player, who's a true national hero. And I think the advice that America will take is not to take South Africa seriously, to treat the ANC and Cyril with the disdain they deserve, but not to punish South Africa as a whole. I think targeted sanctions are coming on the likes of Julius Malema, on the likes of Naledi Pandor and her husband, on the likes of those sort of people. And America has a lot of ammunition, a lot of weaponry that they can bring to bear in targeted sanctions to make people's lives miserable.
And what would the basis be for those sanctions?
hate speech, anti-American activity, dealing with terrorists. I mean, Iran, Hamas, fighting against America on almost every issue in the United Nations. I mean, I think we're top 10 country in poking America in the eye. The ANC think they've had a free rein since 1994 to do anything they like. Firstly, to break and steal this country to death, which they've done, and then to tell everyone what they want to tell them. The fact that Ibrahim Rasool said what he did as a diplomat and then comes home and crows as though it's heroic just tells you how arrogant and moronic those people are.
Yeah, that's certainly.
So targeted sanctions, America, bring them on.
Yeah, and it's going to be very, very interesting. But obviously one of the big things that's international, that will have a bearing on South Africa's international standing, has been China, who are absolutely silent at the moment.
Well, not surprising, because they know it's coming.
Yeah.
They know America is going to resolve the issue with Russia. America is going to sort out the Middle East. And then America is going to come and stare down at China big time. And I do believe China have been and maybe still are preparing to invade Taiwan. That's definitely a priority. And they're going to have second thoughts now because they're going to run out of allies. And for South Africa to actually believe that China is going to be there, the ANC to actually believe that China is going to be there to protect them against America, you've got to be kidding. China doesn't care about South Africa, care about our ports. That's about it. And the nice big trade surplus China has vis-a-vis us.
Yeah, there's no ways Chinese and Russian mothers will want their children to die in South Africa.
Correct.
To protect the ANC.
And the Chinese are the most racist people on the planet.
Yeah.
So ANC, think about that for a second.
Yeah, so there's some interesting times ahead there. But now going back to where we are at the moment, Rob, we're sitting with the country, and the worst cliche that was ever invented is this ticking time bomb nonsense. I wish I could smack everybody that says South Africa is a ticking time bomb, because if we would have exploded 20 years ago. And
what does an explosion mean? Is it civil unrest? What is it? I don't know.
I mean, if we couldn't have civil unrest
after KZN,
with everything that we've tried, and I think when people say that, they're staring down their real fear, which is irrelevance, because that's South Africa's biggest problem.
We're very close
at the moment. We're very close to that. And that is a nasty thing to happen to any person, country, company, whatever, when you just become irrelevant.
So the ANC liberated South Africa, okay? What they forget was actually that the nationalist government in 85 made a conscious decision that it wasn't sustainable, including international pressure, and handed over power peacefully. 2 Nobel Prizes, not just one. But the ANC's lived as this moral superiority for a long time, which has given them a free rein to pretty much run amok, do what they want. That has ended. It's not only ended with South Africa beginning to understand we are irrelevant in the scheme of things. There's the Russia, Ukraine, there's Iran, there's Israel, there's China, there's North Korea. Much bigger issues. But the baseball bat's coming swinging.
Yeah.
Because the ANC has managed to upset the Americans, Democrats and Republicans, to a point where they are going to do something.
Yeah. And what I'm going to try and do, I'll speak to the tech team, is that I saw a little clip of Nelson Mandela on a tour to the US standing next to Bill Clinton saying, thank you to America because America made liberation possible, and that they'll always be our allies, etc. So, was he lying or are these guys lying?
These guys are lying.
Yeah.
They have selective memories. They use excuses so that people don't hold them accountable. But more and more people are going, this mess, international and local, is entirely the ANC.
Okay, so Rob, now we've spoken about things. Now you've been out there. You're telling people. We've discussed where we are. What do people watching this start doing? They probably, have been coerced enough about where to vote. That their vote counts. But what do you think happens in South Africa over the near future? Firstly, do you think this GNU is going to hold?
I do. I do think it's going to hold. On certain issues, I mean, we're going to really find out on the budget.
Yes.
What happens? Will Enoch see sense and come back with no VAT increase, but at last cost cutting? the massive waste and bureaucracy that the ANC is responsible for. That will be a breath of fresh air. The rand will strengthen.
Yeah.
It'll be a change of direction, and I will applaud it.
If you were to advise the GNU partners of the ANC, led by the DA, would you support a budget to hold the GNU together?
I'd reject the VAT increase, but keep the GNU together.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
So then,
but you've got to get all of them together.
Yes.
All the people. You've got to get, DA plus FF plus PA plus whoever else is in there. To reject the VAT increase in toto and keep the GNU together. And say to Enoch, you've got to back down on this one, pal. Cut costs.
Yeah.
Cut your cadres. You can take 100 billion out without even thinking.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that difficult. We did a piece saying, Doge is coming whether you like it or not. Because if you think the budget was hard to get through this year, try another year without growth. Try another year with increased civil servant salaries, etc.
Here's the problem in South Africa. The GNU is based upon, do you remember Swart Gevaar in the 80s? The Nat government were making us all scared. It's now MK Gevaar or Zuma Gevaar. And there is something real about that. If Jacob Zuma and the MK get into government, they become the new partner in the GNU. It is over. We are toast, because this time they've got a worse mob and they know what to do. They're going to rip the shred out of this country. They're going to nationalize banks, land, and mine immediately. So, on the one hand, you've got the MK Gevaar issue, which is real. On the other hand, it is absolutely beyond the pale to increase VAT. It hurts the poorest people in this country. That is unacceptable.
Yeah.
So,
just on that MK Gevaar, if you think that you and I don't like the idea of the MK being in the alliance, how much do you think the ANC wanted? They wanted a hell of a lot less than what you and I wanted, because they know what they're dealing with.
Correct.
So in a way, and I've never understood, the DA's stance of saying that we've got to keep away this doomsday coalition, where it's a bigger doomsday to the ANC than what it is to. It's bad for us, but it's worse for them.
So this is a poker. This is a game of poker. It's staring each other down. And I think you're right. I think 51% the ANC are more afraid of MK than they are of cutting costs. And I think, but the problem is, it's just as far as I know, it's just the DA and FF Plus that's saying we won't take the VAT. I think the others have all caved in. And the ANC,
including your mate Gayton.
Including my mate Gayton.
Yeah.
And because he feels, he thinks that MK Gevaar is way, way, way more threatening than increasing VAT. That's his view. It's a legit view, and fair enough. But I think you could stare down the ANC on this one as a poker player. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, so
But let's see. We've got 1 week to go. The news is the news,
and it is going to shock the country, because obviously there's deep ramifications. if the ANC decide this is a hill to die on, and so do the DA and a few others, you're going to have the budget not being passed. The next step after that, they're going to try again, but now it's a hill to die on. So what do? The next step is a motion of no confidence, and that could lead to an early election.
But there's a step before that. Can't they cobble together Action SA and BOSA and ZB and all these bits and pieces to try and get to 51?
They could, but I don't see that happening, only because they would need the EFF. And if I were the EFF and I could see a situation where you get rid of Ramaphosa, because then it becomes a reality that you get rid of Ramaphosa. You mentioned the SRF poll, which put ANC down at 32%. They go into the 20s without Ramaphosa. So, he's not universally liked in the ANC, but they do understand that they're worse off without him, and they don't realize that they've got nobody to follow. But anyway, that's a separate issue.
Let's follow that through.
Yes.
And let's say they can't get it agreed. They don't want to do a deal with MK, and they can't cobble together an alliance. Yeah? Elections. National election.
Yeah.
I mean, where that would be by the end of the year?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It could be great. It could be great for our subscriber base. But it would be interesting, because then you've got to look around and say, okay, who has made strides since that election? The ANC, we've discussed them. The DA, probably, my biggest complaint about the DA, other than them being determined to be in the back room, is that they will not understand that the bulk of South Africans won't vote for a party that's led by a white person. It's that simple, unless you want white votes. Now, it's easy for Corné Mulder because he only wants white votes. So fine, he doesn't give a shit. It's a family business for him. For the DA, if they had to make their offering a bit more appealing, you could put them up at 30%. But right now, they're going to go into an election and get the same 21% that they got.
So then what do you think happens?
I think that you will see further another 10% down on the ANC, and that being split, going largely to MK. And you could end up with a similar alliance to what we got now.
So you think a more chastened ANC at 25% teams up with a more confident
DA at the same level
at 22, and chuck in a few
smaller,
chuck in a FF plus, but that's going to now push the project to the right.
It would push the project to the right,
which is a great thing.
The danger, of course, is that Ramaphosa's out. That's part of the deal, and then you might end up with a Mashatile, and he might just go for the easy option, which is to go into
Mashatile is EFF. He's definitely that side.
Yeah, although
I think
I do want to say an although. Although in South Africa we've got that wonderful thing that our best capitalists are our communist thieves, right? And these guys understand, much like Zuma. Zuma was pretty good for business.
Much like KGB, the best KGB guys turned into the best capitalists.
Zuma only started to talk about destroying the economy after he had stolen the money, after he was out. While he was there, he kept us all working. And, not saying it was great, but I'm saying it was better than Ramaphosa in terms of supporting the economy, because he understood that the economy has to go so that he can have taxes, so that he could do what he had to do.
Trillions disappeared with his buddy.
Trillions disappeared, but at least we generated trillions. I'm saying that was his business model, but at least he wasn't as disruptive to business as what Ramaphosa has been. He didn't pass an expropriation act.
This is like the worst of two evils.
It is.
How are we comparing one better than the other?
So what I'm saying is that where we may get a surprise is with somebody like Mashatile that's got a pong with him to high heaven.
I don't think it'll be either of them.
Yeah, but whoever comes along, one would imagine that it must be fairly tempting to go back into the old tent. It may happen. Who else is there that's better than
I think the external pressure, America, the fact that Iran won't be around, Russia and China won't be interested, and they're going to run out of friends and money, and America's going to come in swinging, and wanky leftist Europe's going to do nothing, forget them, is going to force somebody to stand up in the ANC, and I think it's going to skip a generation. It's never done this before, but it's going to skip the Paul Mashatile, Fikile Mbalula generation and find someone younger who will say, we need to be unaligned, neutral, and put South Africa first, and be easy to integrate with the DA and FF Plus and PA and in Carter. And I do think, this is hope over experience, that this could be the saving of South Africa.
Well, Rob, what we're going to do is we're going to take some questions from our community.
Okay.
So to everybody that's with us on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Pace Car Rental that throw a little bit our way. And thank you to you for subscribing and watching this today. Rob, thank you for coming through. And we'll see the community on the State of the Nation page. Thank you.